everybody, and welcome to another episode of Sunday Night Live with me, Jonny Lipsham, here at jonnylipshamstudios.co.uk. I think we are rather close to a particularly exciting number of shows. I can't remember what that is, but I'm pretty sure that Kyle will be able to remind me exactly how many shows we have done. And what show number this is, because he is very good at staying on top of those things, unlike me. So I apologize. I'm not very good at staying on top of what number show it is. I seem to recall when I first started doing live streams way back in 2017, I think it was. I think I got like 4 episodes into doing Sunday Night Live. And I lost count, believe it or not. I think I did episode 4, episode 5, and I was just putting in the numbers, episode number, whatever it was. And I think I somehow just lost count and couldn't remember what number episode it was. But but yes, I think we are close to a rather significant number. Like I said, I'm pretty sure that Kyle will be able to tell me very shortly what number episode we are on. But anyway, welcome. I hope everybody is doing well. I'm doing actually pretty good. I've had a very good, busy weekend. It's been very nice. It's been a nice kind of family weekend, which has been great. Weather has been mixed. Saturday was very thundery and rainy. So Kyle says show number 380. So we are 20 away from show number 400, which is cool. So we will, I don't know, pop a balloon for show 400. But really, the show I'm really excited about getting to is show number 500. Because, it's halfway to 1,000. So show number 500 is really what I'm going to get. Excuse me, is really what I'm excited about the most, but 400 is not an insignificant number, so we will kind of acknowledge that for sure. But you'll notice from the title of the show it says Windows 11 Upgrade Edition, and that's because this weekend I finally did what I have been talking about doing for a few months. And mostly I have been talking about doing this for several months because I've been quite apprehensive about doing it. Because when I went from Windows 7 to Windows 10, I just bought a new computer because my old computer wouldn't go up to Windows 10. So I just bought a new computer, is what I did. So I technically didn't actually ever do an operating system upgrade or update or anything like that. I've never done anything like that before. So I was kind of like, it's an unknown territory for me, having never really done it before. Anytime I've needed to, upgrade or something like that, I just basically bought a new computer because I realized that the computer I had was too old to do the upgrade anyway. But in this case, I had the opportunity with this computer to upgrade. So that's exactly what I did. And I had a bunch of concerns, which I'm sure some people have had at some point or other, or maybe you haven't. Maybe you're not like me at all, and you don't have any of these kind of concerns. But for me, one of the concerns I had was about passwords, installing things, and signing into things again, and having to just basically try and go through and remember credentials and stuff like that. That was kind of the thing that I was most concerned about. And probably top of that list of things that I was most concerned about was this channel, actually, and making sure that I was able to get into it and be able to do what I'm doing now, which is, continue to do my live shows. And when it actually came to doing it on Saturday morning, it took, let me think. I think the whole process from the time I clicked on the Get Windows 10 button to the computer having finished doing it and restarted and everything, the whole process took about 3 hours, which wasn't bad at all. I had heard that it would take maybe 2, maybe 3 hours, because basically what I did was I did the in-place update through Windows Update, I know that there is, there are other ways to upgrade your OS, like you basically wipe your operating system from your computer and you basically do a fresh install of Windows. I did not want to do that because that means installing a whole host of stuff. Not just for my own personal use, but stuff for work as well. And, some of it is alpha, some of it is beta. And so, I was kind of a little bit wary of doing that. So I thought, I would just do the thing that is going to be the quickest, the thing that is going to be the easiest. And pretty much everybody I spoke to said, hey, I've done it. It worked. It was fine. And so I just went ahead and did it. And you know what? It was the least painful thing I have ever done with a computer. I say that in all seriousness because I've actually blown up a computer. I blew up a computer in the middle of, this goes back a few years. This goes back to 2012, 2011, 2012. I was working on a music curriculum for the Indian government at the time. And so I was basically recording some samples and some loops and some songs and some learning materials and things like that for the Indian government's brand new national music curriculum for the modern era, basically, because they had not had a modern music curriculum for decades. And so I found myself as part of an educational team helping develop this. So I wrote a lot of the curriculum and I provided all of this audio material for it as well. So in the process of doing this, I was nearly finished, and I was going to finish about 3 days ahead of schedule. So I was pleased with myself. I was very impressed. So I was just working on finishing things up, and as I got to the end of a session, which had been very, very productive, I was so pleased, so happy with how everything had gone. And I was just about to shut things down when suddenly there was a bang from under the desk. And there was the smell of burning immediately and a cloud of smoke. And the computer would not restart. Basically, what had happened, to cut a long story short, was the hard drive, the C drive, had exploded, taking with it another external drive, which had been connected, which had all the data on it that I had just spent 3 months working on for the Indian government. And I was 3 days ahead of schedule. So I was excited to deliver this whole thing to the Indian government 3 days ahead of schedule, and everybody would have been extremely happy. So I now had a computer that had a blown up C drive and an external drive that was also dead. And therefore no computer. Couldn't do the work. Couldn't deliver the materials. What was I going to do? Well, after I turned the air purple with some rather choice language, all in Scots, obviously, I contacted a couple of friends and I borrowed a Mac computer, and I used my audio interface I had at the time, and I used GarageBand, having never used GarageBand at that point at all, ever. So I borrowed a Mac. Had never really used Macs before, didn't really know my way around, and a friend of mine who came to help me because he knew Macs and that kind of thing, and we had to recreate 3 months worth of materials for a brand new music curriculum for the Indian government that had taken 3 months. We had to do it in 3 days. So I basically worked 24 hours a day for 3 days with this friend of mine, and we got all the materials done. and we delivered the curriculum on time. All of the documentation for the curriculum, all the learning materials, all of the samples, all of the loops, which I had to re-record, everything that had to be re-recorded, all of that, all of the song examples I had made myself. I delivered all of that on time to the Indian government in 3 days. I did 3 months' work in 3 days. I didn't eat and I didn't sleep. And I think I went to the toilet once in those 3 days. So I have some horror stories about computers. So I have this kind of love-hate relationship with computers. And so for me, doing something I've never done before on a computer is fraught with somewhat danger, shall we say. But that said, this was probably the least painful thing I've ever done. Because as soon as the computer restarted, it was great. It was all done. And I didn't even have to sign into anything. Everything was just there. It was like having done a Windows 10 update. It was great. It was brilliant. So all of that is now off my shoulders, and I'm not worried about it anymore. So far, it looks like the audio for this show sounds good, and it looks like picture quality is also good. So this is basically the first stream on Windows 11. So I was not sure whether any of my settings would be retained. So the interesting part was all my settings for OBS were completely wiped out. The settings for universal control were also wiped out. I had to do all of that again from scratch. My camera, my webcam, I checked with my webcam. My webcam is not really Windows 11 compatible, but it's working. So I'm not touching it. I'm not changing it. It appears to be working pretty well. But yeah, I had to set up a whole bunch of things from scratch. But I didn't have to sign into anything, which was great. So anyway, I just thought I'd kind of get that story out there. So, having told you that story, let's see who is actually here. Kyle is the first in the door. Well done, Kyle. And Billy was like half an hour behind that. So Kyle's first in the door, followed by Stephen Wilson, followed by Billy. And he said he slept in. That's his excuse. Okay. Well, excuses, Billy. Daryl Harrison is here. Dwayne is here. Ron, who is the key man, is here. Tony Stringer is here. Dave, who is Bops NY, is here. Goldberg over in Salzburg. I believe that's where you are. If memory serves. You are here as well. Let's see who else is here. Matt Cochran is here. And Christina over in Denmark. It's 1:15 in the evening for you folks in Denmark and Germany. You crazy people. Austria, even. You crazy, crazy people. Let's see who else is here. Chasmo51 is here, which is awesome. I'm glad you're here. And who else is here? I'm scrolling down to find out who's here. Neil Thompson is here. Don Oliver is here. Gardner99 is here. Neil says, this is YouTube. Exploding computers equals ratings, baby. Yeah, if I'd actually videoed it happening, then yes, and posted that up on YouTube, that would have been a belter of an idea. No question. DJ V is here. Who else is here? I think I have everybody. There we go. Dave says, there was a spy plane flying over Scotland today. They realized to just go to the pub to get information. Any spy planes that you see flying over Scotland are my personal spy planes. Just so you know. All right. So for those of you who are brand new here, who are watching and who are wondering what the heck is going on, and surely this live stream is about something. Yes, this live stream is about something. What we talk about here is primarily Studio One, but we also talk about recording, mixing, mastering, and all of the stuff that is associated with that. And I take your questions on those subjects. And of course, just last week, Studio One 7.2 was released. So I hope you have been able to take the time to go and install the update and check it out, because there are some very, very cool new features. Not least of which I think is the new pre and post roll thing, which is awesome. I think it's fantastic. What else do we have? We also have Sub-Zero Bass, which is a new instrument which doesn't just have to be a bass instrument. You can use it for a whole bunch of different things. Like there are some sounds where you could use it for chords, and there's some effect sounds there as well. So there's plenty of cinematic Foley type stuff there. Some nice low deep rumbles for those of you that like really scary deep rumbly shit. That's there. It's fantastic. I really like it. Some people have kind of gone meh, and you know what? Those of you that are in that camp of going meh, you're entitled to your opinion, and that's fine. I happen to like it. Of the new instruments that we have in Studio One, Deep Flight 1, Lead Architect, Cinematic Lights, and Sub-Zero Bass, I think my personal favorite is Cinematic Lights. I really like Cinematic Lights. It's great. There are so many cool things you can do, especially layering it with some of the other instruments. Like, for example, blending a preset from Lead Architect with a preset from Cinematic Lights. Blend those together as a multi-instrument. Put some different reverb and delay effects on the two different instruments in the multi-instrument, and you can create something really, really unique. And then if you really want to go to town, run it through Xtrem, followed by the rotor, and you can get some really weird, interesting sounds, which are well worth exploring. Now, here's the thing. A lot of people go, you know what? These new instruments don't have a whole bunch of interesting presets. They don't seem to be, they seem to be a little bit, cookie cutter kind of sounding. Well, you know what? Engage your imagination. Do something unique with the sounds that are there. Butcher those sounds and make something that is uniquely yours and save it as a preset inside the instrument. And then you've got a whole bunch of unique sounds that are unique to you. And you can create multi-instruments and save those as multi-instruments. So you can blend Sub-Zero Bass with Cinematic Lights and Deep Flight 1, whatever you want to do. Create a multi-instrument that has different presets, different manipulations of LFOs and stuff like that. And you can do a whole bunch of stuff and create some really unique and interesting sounds, which you can then save as a multi-instrument. And make some weirdness, and then you can start making something really creative with that weirdness. For example, one of the things I am hoping to get as I head towards my 50th birthday and or Christmas is the newest incarnation of Akai's Iwi, the wind synth. And I intend to basically create a whole bunch of sounds using the new instruments for playing on the Iwi, and creating some interesting pieces of music using the Iwi. So yeah, and unfortunately the Iwi is not a cheap instrument. So but yeah, that's kind of one of the things I want to do, is create a whole bunch of sounds that are unique for that. So the new sound, the new instrument, I think, is really good. And again, employ a little bit of creativity in making your own sounds with it. Would be my advice with the new instrument. punch and roll I think the pre-roll, post-roll thing, I think is really, really good, especially because one of the things you can do with that is you don't even have to press the stop button once you've started recording. You start the recording and then it will stop when it gets to the end of the post-roll. That, to me, is very, very cool, especially if you are kind of doing hands-free kind of remote recording where maybe your vocal booth is at the back of the room or something. Yeah, you can use Studio One Remote, and that's valid, and have a very long cable from a fader port with a punch pedal. Yeah, you can certainly do that. That's definitely a valid setup to have, and I actually know people that have that setup. But this just kind of makes it even easier for recording, in my opinion. All right, let's go see what questions we've got now that I've kind of got all of that out of my system. Presets are cool, but in a way they kill creativity, don't they, says DJ Vu. I disagree. Presets are there to be butchered and manipulated and do things with them. Don't just use just the preset and go, there's a bass sound. Do something different with it. Manipulate it. Be creative with those presets, and then then out of that, if you like what you have, save it. Save it as a new preset. And then the cool thing with that is that when you've saved that as a preset, then if you want to recall that really interesting, unique sound that you just created, it's there. And whenever you have a song that fits, or a composition or a piece of film music that you're working on that fits that particular new preset that you created, you can just recall it just like that. So I'm all for presets, whether they are made by the manufacturer of the plugin or instrument, or whether they're presets that I've made myself. Presets that I've made myself are particularly useful because they are sounds that I'm likely to use repeatedly over and again. And it does, presets that you make yourself that you know that you're going to use regularly basically saves time, in my opinion. Goldberg says, I don't like the velocity setting. There should be a global on-off. I'm not sure what you mean by velocity setting. I know there's aftertouch, and yes, you can adjust the aftertouch. You can turn that off if you don't like the aftertouch effect where it like gives some pitch bend and things like that. If you don't like that, yes, you can certainly turn that off. Let's see. Ron says, what happened to the pre-roll parameter in the metronome setup dialog? It's still there as far as I know. Let's go and check. Oh, you're quite right. There is no pre-roll anymore. It's pre-count. And that's because, let's go over to show the screen so we can all see what we're all talking about. And that's kind of because everything that is pre-roll has moved over to this panel here. Let's get the level meter out of the way. So if I enable pre-roll here and post-roll, you can set this up here rather than in the metronome setup. So it's kind of not necessary to have it in the metronome setup now when you have it here. So if I set all of that to 2, for example, now when I record, I get 2 bars of pre-count and 2 bars of pre-roll. Plus, I also have 2 bars of post-roll after we have auto-punched in and auto-punched out. And it will stop by itself at that point. So I think the reason why the pre-roll option here is no longer available, and you just got a checkbox for pre-count, is because it's here now instead. That would be my view. But there again, we have a separate pre-count here. So why do we have a pre-roll here, but not here? I'm not 100% sure because I don't really use pre-roll. Pre-roll is not really something I use at all. Have never really had a situation where I've really needed pre-roll. Even if I'm punching in, I don't necessarily need pre-roll. because I kind of know where I am, or at least I generally speaking, I tend to know exactly where I am in the piece of music that I'm working on. So I don't really need the pre-roll for context. I know, kind of, I'm at bar 28, and this is what I play at bar 28. So it's just a case of 2 bars of counting. I start on bar 28 and play what I need to play. So I don't really need the pre-roll, personally. But I think the reason why we have a pre-count here, if I disengage all of these, is because this is all to do with punching. Whereas you need a pre-count in pretty much every scenario. Notice, though, even when these are disabled, the pre-count still lights up here. See that? So that lights up and that checkbox checks at the same time. So even if I'm just recording from scratch into a brand new track, a brand new song, I still need pre-count, but I don't need auto punch and I don't need post-roll. Unless I'm kind of dropping in where I make a mistake, in which case pre-roll is down here, and then the post-roll is here for that. So I think that's probably where the logic is with that, but I totally understand your question. I totally understand why you're going, hey, where's the pre-roll that used to be here? There used to be a checkbox for that. Yes, they did. And I don't think I think the logic here is that it's no longer required with this new feature here. But good question. Good question indeedy. Like it. DJ says, what do you think is the best thing in the latest OS update? For Windows 11, I don't really know, actually, because I've only been on it for, the better part of 24 hours. So there's still a lot of things that I'm finding out. One of the things I am finding out is that stuff that I'm used to basically just being able to go and grab or have access to in Windows 10, they're not there anymore. They've been consolidated into other menus. Or, like, for example, things like Notepad. Notepad is completely different to the way it used to be. It's been kind of spruced up quite a bit. That's one of the things I did notice. And there's no save button that I could see in Notepad anymore, where there used to be. There used to be a save button, but now there isn't. It kind of dynamically updates when you start a document or you open an existing document and start adding things to it in Notepad. You don't actually need to save anymore. It just dynamically updates, which is kind of interesting. Kind of cool. So there's things that I think are going to take a little bit of getting used to. One of the first things, and you'll see from when I go back over to the screen here, looking at the taskbar at the bottom, one of the first things was that this taskbar was center justified. And that seems to be the default behavior for Windows 11, that the start button is in the middle, but it didn't take me very long to figure out. That you could actually left justify it like it's always been on Windows 10. So because I'm still kind of a little bit Windows 10 familiar, I put this back over onto the left. So the start button is back over here. And this is all kind of familiar to me. I do like the icons, and I like the little black line underneath something when it's active, when it's the active thing on the screen. And then other applications that are open, but they're not active on the screen, just have a dot underneath them. I like that too. I think that's very cool. So yeah, there's some things that are kind of like, oh, that's excuse me. That's a nice little touch. Kind of like it. But yeah, so now that I've done this, I don't need to worry about having to do this in October. So I'm glad I've done it now. Hang on, I have something stuck in my throat, so I'm going to have to have something to drink. There we go. Neil says, Lulled literally at scary, deep, rumbly shit. Yes, it's the most technically sound thing I think I've ever said. And as a bass player, it's definitely a thing for bass players. Scary, deep, rumbly shit is something that bass players do a lot. And being a bass player, it's something I do for a living. And sometimes when I'm in the bathroom, the same effect happens. But that's probably too much information. Billy says, questions for Jonny. Type the @ symbol before Jonny Lipsham Studios, and your question will be highlighted for him to see. You won't see it highlighted, but he will. Thank you very much, Billy. You are quite correct. And that makes things a lot easier for me to see. Let's see. DJ says, your approach to the topic of presets, you approach the topic of presets excellently, but many young creators rely solely on those sounds and evaluate new instruments based on the presets they contain. Yeah, you're right there. You're right there that some people, they just take one little look at the presets and they go, yeah, these aren't very good. This can't be a very good instrument then. It's just like, come on, man. Manipulate the sound. Do something. Do something creative with it. Because that's what presets are for. Presets aren't just kind of like, oh, there's a sound. You play that sound and that's it. Presets are, you can do that. I'm not knocking doing that because sometimes that's the right thing to do. Like if you are after a piano sound or a trumpet sound or a flugelhorn sound or a saxophone sound or whatever for your particular piece of music, that might be entirely appropriate. You don't manipulate your sound. You just select the sound and you play it. But where we're talking about these virtual instruments that Presonus have made, the Cinematic Lights, Deep Flight 1, Lead Architect, and Sub-Zero Bass, those sounds have been lovingly crafted, not just by the team in Hamburg, but also by a collective of film composers and sound designers that we are working with in kind of a partnership to create these sounds. So they've created those sounds, but the thing is, manipulate them. Do something creative with them that makes them uniquely yours, that separates your use of the instrument from somebody else's use of the exact same instrument. So this is why I'm going to talk about a related subject here, and that is the subject of things like samples and loops that you get from places like Splice. So there is this thing where people will drag stuff in, especially with the new Splice integration in Studio One 7. They will drag these loops and these sounds in from Splice, and they will drag them into their song, and they will lovingly create this awesome song, and then they'll post it up on SoundCloud, or they'll post it up on YouTube, and before they know it, they're getting content ID hits on their video or on their song. And they're like, why? These are supposed to be royalty-free things. Yeah, they are. And because they're royalty-free, it means other people are using the same sounds. They're using the same loops. But they are copyrighting their songs that uses those sounds. And so things like algorithmic-based systems like YouTube, they don't care about that. What the algorithm in YouTube, for example, cares about, and I know this from my own personal experience from Sunday Night Live, is what the algorithm cares about is it goes, aha, that's been used in this other video, or that's been used in this other song. Like, for example, when I did the Fender Studio demo for the launch of Fender Studio, I demonstrated those jam tracks. Guess what? I got content ID hits on that live stream from playing those things. Why? Because I didn't do anything with them to make them my own. I was just demonstrating what they sound like so that you guys can hear what they sound like. Now, for me, thankfully, it doesn't bother me because this channel is not monetized. So, somebody else is going to get the advertising money from that live stream. I don't really care. I really don't care. But here's the thing. That's why that happens. If you want to not have that happen on SoundCloud or YouTube or some other streaming platform for your music, you've got to take these loops and these samples and you've got to do something unique with them. Manipulate them, change them, do something creative with those loops. You know, even if you put some kind of EQ filter on a drum loop that makes it sound like it's going through a car wash, and then you bury that in the background of your song, and you layer it with real live drums, for example, that's not going to get you a content ID hit for using that drum loop. Whereas if you just drag that in straight virgin as it is, you can get a content ID hit because that drum loop might crop up in somebody else's song. So the moral of this little story is, with any presets from any virtual instrument and from any sample pack, any loops from any loop libraries or sample packs, do something creative and unique with them, not just so that you avoid content ID and stuff like that, but you're being creative and you're doing something that is unique and is yours, and you're not just relying upon, okay, that's a drum loop, I'm just going to use that. Use that as a basis for building your track and then replace it with real drums, or, you know, do something to that drum loop to make it unique and different. And you're less likely to encounter ID content issues. Good call on the splice thing. Is there a 6-second rule? No, there is if you drop your food on the floor, though. Let's see. Carl says when JL lets loose in the bathroom, it is the definition of sub bass. Yeah, definitely. Boosts below 60 hertz, definitely. We got 25 people watching here. Thank you very much for joining me, everybody who is watching right now. You guys are all amazing. If you have not hit the like button, please do, because I would like to get 25 likes to match the 25 people that are watching. That would be fantastic. If you're watching and you have not subscribed to the channel yet, please do so, because when you hit that subscribe button, after 2 minutes, the live chat opens up and you can have your say. You can ask a question. And I'd love to get to know you. So please do that. I was trying to avoid saying do, and it kind of worked, I think. But yeah, by engaging that way, I'd love to know whereabouts in the world you are watching this show from. That would be very cool. I know that we've got people in Europe and we've got people in the United States here watching. We got Rich Cresswell here in the UK watching as well. Rich is one of my moderators, and speaking of my moderators, I've got to give a very special shout out to those guys. Thank you so much for helping me keep this show moving along and keeping this community nice and safe and dealing with stuff when it crops up. These days, because we are in subscriber mode only, we don't tend to get any issues because everybody here is a subscriber. So that's a good thing. But moderators, thank you very much. I appreciate everything you do, especially when you are posting links to things that I talk about, or you are giving some instruction on how for people to be able to ask questions. That helps me a lot. It means that I don't necessarily have to say those things. So thank you very much for saying those. Rich says he's still waiting for his check. I will pop it in the mail, I promise. Let's see. DJ says, for me, presets are a presentation of the capabilities of a given instrument, which helps me determine the usefulness and potential for developing my music. Certainly they can do that. Now, here's the thing. If you go through the entire preset list of an instrument, most people at that point would just, and they don't find anything that they like. Most people at that point would just dismiss the instrument, and they'll say, there's nothing useful there. And they'll probably uninstall it and never touch it again. Yes, you can do that. However, on the other hand, what if you were to combine 2 or 3 of these presets and do something unique and creative with that combination of 3 presets? You could end up with something that's not been, a sound that nobody has heard before that could be very unique. So presets from that point of view, I think are very, very useful. Here's where I think that presets aren't useful or as useful or as overall helpful. And that is presets for plugins like EQs, compressors, reverbs, delays, that kind of thing. Presets on those kind of instruments, effects plugins, I think those are less helpful. And I think they are less useful. Notice how I am not saying that they are unnecessary, because I'm not saying that. And there's a really good reason why I'm not saying that. Presets on EQs and compressors and reverbs and delays can be really, really great for somebody who is just getting started, who doesn't really maybe know a whole lot about EQ or compression or reverb or delay or any of those kind of effects plugins that we use to make our mixes sound amazing and to get good separation between different elements of the song and different elements of the mix. So presets can give you a really good idea of what might sound good for an average recording scenario. So for example, let's take an EQ that has a male preset, a male vocal preset. It's designed to be generic for generic male vocals. Is that going to suit every voice of every male that you work with? No, it's not. But what it will do is it will give you a good starting point for where you need to then take that. So it may well be that it may have a boost up at around 5K, or it might have a boost up at around 3K, or somewhere like that where you get a little bit of kind of extra brightness, or it might have a boost up at 10 or 12K to give you a little bit of air. That kind, because up in those kind of frequency bands, those kind of frequency areas, that's where you can make the vocal sound expensive. Like maybe you used a cheaper microphone, a $200 microphone. Well, manipulating the upper frequencies on an EQ can make it sound more expensive. So doing that, taking a starting point of a preset for a general male vocal can get you a lot of the way to the sound that you want, and then you can tailor make it from there. So presets are good from that perspective. However, the best thing you can do is learn which frequency bands are going to enhance and which frequency bands are not going to enhance the sound. They're going to make the sound worse. And so you will learn over time which way, whether you need to boost in a certain point or cut in a certain point. And sometimes where you boost and cut won't be the same, not just because the vocalist is different, but because how the vocal was recorded might be different. The microphone you use might be different and have a different frequency response. That means you have to manipulate the EQ in a different way, or it's captured in a different room, or maybe the vocalist was standing too close to the microphone, so you get a little bit of that, a little bit of a boost in the low mids and the lows from proximity effect that might actually be too much and might actually overwhelm other bass instruments. So rather than just boosting the bass guitar and boosting the low end of keyboards and things like that to try and compensate for that, the best thing to do is go, where is this little bass bump coming from? It might be that it's coming from your vocal track because of the way the vocal was recorded. And if that's the case, you just do a nice little notch filter cut where that kind of bass low end boost kind of is from the proximity effect, and the vocals sound nicer. And you'll also find that as the vocal sounds nicer and opens up in the upper mids, because you've just done a cut down low, the upper mids will start to come through, the vocals sound a lot cleaner, and guess what? Your bass instruments will start to come through as well. And all you did was make a little cut in the vocal. And that's a powerful EQ lesson all on its own that will stand you the test of time. I can remember when I very first did that, and all I did was make one little 3-4 dB cut around about 450 on a vocal once, relatively broad cut, so it was quite wide. It was maybe between about 400 and 480 where the cut was. And so I made that little cut, and the vocal just came alive. Suddenly it had upper end that I couldn't hear before. And now the bass guitar and the low strings on the guitars were now coming through where they hadn't been before. And that blew my mind the first time that happened. When that happened, that was a long, long time ago. I was doing this on an SSL console, so there was no screen and no, graph so that I could see kind of what was boosted and what was cut. No visual displays. I was just using my ears. I was just listening. And as soon as I made that little cut, just by turning the knob on the EQ for that channel on the SSL console, it totally, my mind was blown. I was just like, wow, one EQ move brightened up my mix in an instant, because I found what was causing the problem and I eliminated it with one move. Totally blew me away. But so what I'm trying to say here is that presets can get you started. And like Rich says here, he says presets can be useful for reverse engineering a sound and learning what a synth can do. If you only use the presets, you are limiting yourself and ultimately will spend money chasing the dragon for the perfect sound. Absolutely right. I could not agree more with that statement. Excellent, excellent statement. Rich says, if someone positively comments on an element within your song and it is borrowed from a sample and you say thanks, well, I think I see your point there. I think I see your point. So again, that goes back to do something creative and unique with any samples that you use. So that your treatment of those samples is unique. You've maybe made them less recognizable. So it's less obvious that it's a sample from a sample pack. Let's see. Billy says, have I installed the updates for the mix effects? I've installed all of the updates for Studio One. Of course I have. I work for the company, so yes, I've got all of those updates and I've tested them a lot as well. Basically, all the updates for the mix effects, the VU meter, and all of those things, they are just updates to make them work better in Studio One 7.2, fundamentally. So that's why there are no release notes for any of those, because release notes for those plugins, it's not necessary. All they do is just bring them up to snuff for Studio One 7.2. That's it. Nothing special. So, if you go, oh, great, there's updates to the mix effects. Let's go and open that Brett console. It looks exactly like it did before. It even sounds exactly like it did before. Yes, it does. It's just been brought up to standard for Studio One 7.2. Okay? That's all that's happened there. And to be fair to the VU meter has been in need of an update for a very long time. It's hardly been touched in about 4 years. So it was in need of a little bit of an update to make sure that it works in Studio One 7.2. So we did that. Carl says, take time separate from your creative time to learn, play, understand plugins. Then you'll make better use of it during your creative time. That's an excellent piece of advice. Okay. Scuba Doc's Apartments. Doc from Montego Bay, Jamaica. And he says, hi from the Caribbean, following you since your restart after your channel got hacked. You're talking about the wrong Jonny. My channel has not been hacked. So I think you're talking about Jonny Gibe. My channel has not been hacked. But I will pass that on, that you have been following him since he restarted his channel. I will definitely pass that on. So thank you. And you say you are an icon. Oh, that's great. I will pass that on to Jonny. That's very nice of you to say so. He would be delighted to hear you say that. I will pass that on. But yes, you are referring to Jonny Gibe, but not me. My channel has never been hacked. Knocking on the wood there. Hopefully my channel will never get hacked, but you just never know. These days, you just never know. DJ says, the truth is that every DAW allows for the creation of professional music, high-level mixing, and decent mastering with native plugins. You just need to know how to use it. That is also very correct. Very correct indeed. Yeah, I think every DAW does that. You know, whether you're using GarageBand, whether you're using Reaper, whether you're using Logic or Pro Tools or Cubase or any of the others, you totally can make professional grade, high-level music. No question about it. It is about finding a tool set that works best for you and finding a workflow that works best for you and then making music as best you can in that scenario. So for me, I have stayed with different DAWs for a very long time. For most of my career, I was a Cubase and Pro Tools guy. So I used Cubase for my own work, and I use Pro Tools for my my work professionally with clients in studios and that kind of thing, because Pro Tools is still the industry standard for major label studios. So you gotta know Pro Tools if you want to work in the major label large format studios. You gotta know Pro Tools, and so I hate Pro Tools. I think it's the least efficient. I think it's the least efficient, and I think it's the most stupid designed DAW in all of DAWdom, to be honest. Yeah, I'm definitely not a fan of Pro Tools at all, and it's so unstable. It's ungodly how unstable that thing is. But for making my own records in my own studios and also doing music production for other clients, I used Cubase, and I did that for, 25, 26, maybe 27 years before I switched to Studio One in 2013, back in the day when it was Studio One version 2. And everything was very gray back then. We didn't have all of these channel colors and track colors. None of that existed. It was, and no mix effects engine or any of the stuff that we have now in Studio One 7. Back in the day in Studio One 2, you could totally make professional grade. I hate using that term pro level because it reminds me of Unison, and Unison, I have very, very sweary words to say about Unison that I'm not going to do here because it's not appropriate. But, yeah. So, yeah, even in version 2 of Studio One, you could totally make professional level, professional grade, high level music. Just as much as you can in Studio One 7 now. And so imagine the massive impact that version 3 had when suddenly Studio One went Technicolor. It was like going from watching black and white TV and and watching the World Championship snooker in black and white, where the commentators had to tell you that the brown is snookered behind the yellow, and then tell you exactly which ball they're referring to, because obviously it's black and white, so you don't know which color is which. and then suddenly watching the same thing in glorious color. That was what version 3 was like. It was just like, it was amazing. The change from version 2 to version 3, where it was in color. It was great. And of course, here we are. Here we are, you know, in version 7.2. And time has flown by, and it feels like hardly any time has gone by at all. But here we are in version 7. So it's mental to think all the features that we've added since version 2. If I were to count them all up, I would imagine, if I were to count them up, if I was to estimate the number of new features and improvements that have been added to Studio One since version 2, I think we would probably get close to 450, maybe even 550 new features and improvements in all those years since 2013, in those 12 years. That's a lot of new features and improvements and upgrades for sure. But yeah, I avoid Pro Tools like the plague. If I have to use it, I have to use it, but I would rather not. And as for Keybase, I haven't touched it in 12 years. I don't have a Steinberg account anymore. My license is long gone. I think I actually destroyed it. I deleted my account at Steinberg. So yeah, the product key is gone because of that. But I still had the old physical CD, DVD thing that you installed it on. That for a long time was a coaster for my mugs. And then I think when we moved house, I think it must have just got thrown out. So yeah. But I still have the little e-licenser dongle, which is in one of my boxes back behind me. I've got a shelf up here full of boxes here. And my e-licenser dongle for Steinberg is in there somewhere. And it obviously won't work because I don't have the Steinberg account anymore. Dave says, I have created stems from some other files from other DAWs. They are now in a folder. How do I move those tracks from folder to tracks without attached to folder? You just open the folders. You have to delete the folders. Basically, when you delete a folder track, it should just basically toss out everything that's in that folder onto the Arranger view and into the mixing console as well. So if you delete the folder, basically all the contents just get spilled out. They don't get deleted, just the folder gets deleted. So that will work for you, I'm pretty sure. Tony Stringer said he started in version 4 and is now on version 6. Awesome, good for you. Neil says, where were you in the 60s? You could have sold thousands of RCA color TVs to the masses. Maybe. No, I was not born until 1975. So, yes, I conveniently sidestepped the 1960s and the first half of the 1970s, but I still consider myself a 70s kid. I was born in 1975, halfway through the 70s. But my earliest memories are of the 70s, not of the 80s. You'd think because I was born in 75 that really, I wouldn't have any memories of the 70s, but I do. I have some very, very clear memories. I have very, very clear memories of the summer of 1976, because it was unbelievably hot in the summer of 76. And of course, I also remember 1977 for two incredible reasons. The first was the Buddy Rich album Time Check, which I think was released in that year. I think I could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure it was 1977 that Time Check came out. But Steely Dan's Asia also came out that year, and pretty much the day it was released in the UK, my mother went and bought it. In fact, she bought both records. And we played those all day. Yeah, we played those records all day in 1977. And so that for me is my memory of my defining memory of 1977 was being, 2 years old and listening to those records and just being blown away by the music. I loved it. It was just the most incredible music. And I loved it. And I made my mother play those records over and over and over again. And I would get most upset if she turned them off. August 1977, the king died. Which country is that, Kyle? I'm not quite sure where you're referring to, because in 1977 here in the UK, Queen Elizabeth II was queen. We didn't have a king. So I'm not sure what country you're referring to. And as far as I know, the United States of America has never had a king. So yeah, I'm not quite sure where you're referring to there. Oh, Elvis Presley, of course. He is the unofficial king of the United States. Absolutely. 1977, yes. And it's funny, actually, I don't actually remember that event at all. And he died on the toilet. Yes, he died having a shit. Which is interesting, because I have had a family member die in exactly the same manner. He pretty much died on the toilet having a shit as well. Matt Cochran says, what are the stats on stopping artists to outright sales of new Studio One Professional? Good question. Don't know. I don't work in sales, so I don't know. I don't know anything about what the stats are. The king died in 52. Good question. I don't remember. I think you're right. I think it was 1950. I think it might have been 1951 that he actually died, and then Queen Elizabeth came to the throne in 1952, or rather her coronation was in 1952. So here's how it works. When the reigning monarch dies, the heir to the throne immediately accedes and becomes the monarch. But there is a gap between the heir to the throne becoming the new monarch and their coronation. It can be as much as 9 months to a year, maybe even a little bit longer. Yeah, that's kind of how that works. So, for example, when Queen Elizabeth died in 2022, immediately Prince Charles becomes king. But then it was, a wee bit later before he was crowned king at his coronation. So yeah, it's a wee bit, there's a wee bit of a gap. Anyway, with that, on that regal note, we have done pretty well for viewers tonight. We peaked at 25, which is great. Thank you very much, everybody, for watching. I appreciate you guys immensely. You guys are the best darn YouTube audience on YouTube, and it is typically a year. Rich says there is a mourning period and the procession period, and planning of the official coronation ensue. Yes, so it typically takes a year. I thought it might have been 9 months, but I guess 9 months to a year, maybe round about that would be about right. So yeah, I'll take that. All right, thank you very much, everybody. Thanks for joining me. I appreciate it a lot, and I hope it sounded good, and I hope it looked good on your screens following my update to Windows 11. I'm very glad to have joined everybody else who has been on Windows 11 for probably 2 years. You guys that have been on Windows for 2 years are probably going, oh my God, you're so late to the party. Yes, I am late to the party. I was late to the party on Windows 10 as well, by the way. And actually, I do that for all good reasons, because I know that when a new operating system is released, just like any other software, there are going to be bugs, and there are going to be problems, and there are going to be issues. And so I like to wait until a lot of those things are sorted out, so that by the time I do make my update or my upgrade, most of the big stuff is all dealt with, and now we're just down to kind of finessing the thing. Neil says the show went great, both technically and spiritually. Wow. And spiritually. That's awesome. Yes, I was at church this morning, so maybe that helped with the spiritual aspect, although I did say shit about 4 times in this show, which is not as sweary as I have been. I can remember my New Year's Hogmanay show where I was considerably inebriated. For those of you that have never seen me drunk, please do go check out the Hogmanay show. I was very drunk because I had already downed maybe a bottle and a half of champagne and was already on a second bottle of champagne when I started the show. I was very sweary. So if you want to go and amuse yourself with that, you can do. All right, folks, take care. I will see you on Wednesday for Songwriting Simplified. Good night, everybody.
Bye.